All right, folks, Tim Harridge here, just joining you for our weekly REI Mastermind webinar. We've got my buddy Kevin Ortner. Kevin's president, CEO of Minneapolis-based Renters Warehouse, the nation's largest and fastest-growing residential property management company. They manage my portfolio. They manage many investors' portfolios, and even onesie-twosie mom-and-pop operators across the nation. We'll let Kevin bore you with his company later. I want to dive right into finding out what the HELL is going on in the market. Specifically, Kevin, we'll start off with Julian Castro, the mayor down in San Antonio. Tweeted, he was tweeting earlier this week, and one of the things he tweeted said, 1/3 of renters missed the April rent. I have seen nothing along those lines. Have you?
Not in the single family rental space. So across our whole portfolio, I was just looking this morning, we are within about 97% of our typical rent collection by this time of the month. So, we're a little behind, but it's nothing major. I mean, we have 93% of all of our rent is in, right? We're generally 95, 96% here. We get the last little bit to the end. And those that are affected are, affordable housing, people who really are, tight on money and that kind of stuff. But we've seen really successful rent collection so far this month. I have heard that stat thrown around of 1/3. And I did see some articles earlier this month that hit the multifamily space in a big way. Multifamily operators, large multifamily operators are reporting about 67% of the rent paid by the 10th or something. But we've had a lot of time since then. So I haven't seen an updated stat, but I was a little worried going into April, as many of us were, I think. And I think April turned out pretty well from our perspective.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think I think that people, I believe there's a country song, I believe most people are good, right? I believe people want to work, and I believe people want to honor their commitments. And so I believe that even though we're kind of going through this odd time, I feel like it's going to work out. I probably wasn't that optimistic 45 days ago. But then after you told me a couple of weeks ago that, I was paid up for the month, I was like, oh, okay.
Your portfolio was paid in full.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I wanted to start off with the alarming stat of the day, but just if you would just spend some time talking to our group about what you're seeing and hearing, everything from the national scale, from legislation to landlord actions to tenant requests, and kind of just give us that, 20, 30,000 foot view of what you see going on from where you sit in Minneapolis.
Yeah. So look, I think, like we said, April rent collection was pretty good. I am a little bit more concerned with May because we just don't know, right? It's unknown. This whole thing is unprecedented, so we really don't know what's going to happen. And I don't know how many of our residents, had some money saved up, were able to pay April rent, or frankly, we're working through most of March, we're able to pay April rent. As we talk about rent collection stats first still, on the first of the month, both the 1st and the 2nd of April, we collected more rent as a percentage of our portfolio than we had in January, February, March, which was pretty surprising. So I think half of our portfolio was paid by the 2nd, and we were ahead of pace on both of those days. So it was a really great start. I think it's finishing well, but I'm a little concerned with May for a couple of reasons. Perhaps income issues for people who have lost their job in April or now been out of work for a month and maybe ran through some savings. But I actually think, as you talk about legislation and what we're hearing come down, I don't know this. This is just me kind of bloviating, and I'm not an economist. I don't play one on TV, but I think some of the people who haven't paid, again, as you talk about, most people are good. I think most people are, but there's also people who are worried and scared about their situation and also the unknown of what's going to happen. And they're hearing from Washington, D.C., from our federal legislators, all the way down to their state and local, that like paying rent and paying your mortgage is optional during this crisis, right? Whether the bills are passed or not, that's the talk. And I kind of have to wonder, of the last little bit of percentage we haven't collected yet, how many of those people would have paid if they weren't hearing these messages continually of, you know, hey, we're going to figure out a way we don't have to pay rent or we don't have to pay mortgages or all these different kind of things. Because at the end of the day, I was just talking with a buddy of mine about this. The unemployment assistance that's being offered for people who are unemployed right now is crazy, right? $600 a week from the feds plus what you qualify for from state level. You know, so at a minimum, people are making $2,400 a month still, just from federal unemployment through the states, plus whatever they're going to make. So like they should, in theory, have the money to come through. Now, the caveat, obviously, are people who are independent contractors, aren't true W-2 employees. It's a little more difficult. Although even with that, there's this pandemic unemployment insurance that independent contractors can qualify for. And so we've been, from a renter's warehouse policy on just how we've been trying to address this, we've just trying to be super helpful with our residents that are calling in and saying they're having a problem. We know these programs exist. We know they can get access to this money. And so we're just asking, you know, hey, are you on it? Have you gotten it? If you haven't, like, we'll help you figure out how to sign up for it because it's there. And so in theory, we really shouldn't have a big problem even in May. I do think, though, the biggest issue that we're going to face is just the perception from some that they don't have to pay, right? We have in my opinion, a really crazy congresswoman here in Minnesota, Ilhan Omar, and she has a bill going through Congress right now that's literally just doing away with all rent payments and all mortgage payments, like across the board, if it passes, which it won't, but this is how people are thinking. Just, it's forgiven, not even like deferred, just forgiven until this is over, which is not defined, right? Until it's over, we're going to forgive it, and the federal government's going to pay for it, kind of thing. And so those stories are always out there. People are talking about how it's not required here. So I think that's affecting it, but ultimately, I think the money's getting into residents' hands, and so hopefully we can continue to be proactive with that and work hard to collect it.
You know, I think what I've been trying to do the last month now is try to help people understand what the options are, and not only for our members, because many of our members are smaller investors that, when they get stuck with a widget or a house that doesn't sell, and then they have one that doesn't close on a whole, they just, the train stops.
Yeah.
And I think I've found that it's so much about education. I was speaking to one of my family members the other day that's an independent contractor where she works, and I said, look, you need to file for unemployment. She said, I can't file for unemployment. I'm self-employed. I'm like, you should read my blog or read my emails or actually turn on the news,
Right.
And we've done that with our contractors that work with us normally, and just told them, said, look, you don't have to go tell someone that you were 1099 and you just didn't have any work this week. Go get the money and pay your bills, and
right.
So I think that's good that you're kind of educating, but what are, I was talking with someone yesterday. Who was it? One of my buddies. Oh, Hudson Henley. He's an attorney here in Dallas. And, his concern was, because he owns a bunch of multifamily and a bunch of single family. And his concern was, as an attorney, once you start having the news media and other attorneys going out saying, hey, that landlord can't do anything. Don't let that landlord push you around.
Yep.
You just worry that people misallocate funds and not just take care of business, I think.
That's right. So that's a concern. But look, things have been playing out okay. I just got off a call this morning. We're preparing for May. And again, that's about communication with our residents, education, helping them understand where this is at. And that's the approach we've been trying to take too from a business, is getting the information out to our residents, to our property owners who might be in a tight spot, to our employees. One of the proudest things we've done at Renters Warehouse, this whole thing, is we're 100% staffed. We haven't laid anyone off. We haven't had to furlough anyone. We haven't taken any pay cuts. Business is functioning fine. We're slower, but things are fine. But at the same token, our employees probably have someone in their household or their family affected by this. And we just want to make sure they have the information too, right? Because there's so many different options out there for people to be able to take care of themselves. So we've been pushing that out, and that's big. But on the positive side, as we're talking about what we're seeing and what's happening, I think I don't know if I coined it or not, but I've been telling people, I'm coining the term of just crisis fatigue. I think as a country, there's a lot of places that are just worn out from this thing. You're seeing that obviously with a lot of the protests going on around different state capitals, like, let us go, let us out kind of thing, fighting for some constitutional rights. But even those that aren't that hung up and they're not going to go out and protest and think that their constitutional rights are being infringed on. They're just kind of tired of sitting around doing nothing. And so we saw a massive drop in showing activity and applications coming in and just all that kind of stuff on available rental properties in the middle of March as this really started to hit. These stay-at-home orders were taking place. About 2 weeks of just a big decline. But since the third week in March, we've been just steadily increasing, going up and up and up. And we're back to kind of end of February, beginning of March numbers now for showings, for inquiries, for applications on homes. And, you know, that's not perfect because in April, we should be doing much better than the end of February in our seasonal markets. But, you know, the fact that we're seeing it up into the right week after week, day after day, it's really encouraging. For real estate investors out there to know that we're seeing a lot of activity. I was on a call with each one of my markets over the last 2 days, talking to our sales leaders there and some of the agents. And I'd say 75% of them said, hey, we're feeling pretty good. We're pretty busy. We might get close to making our numbers. And then there's 25% of the markets that were saying, hey, yeah, we're definitely feeling it. It's slow. And those are generally the places like Seattle, where it was realtors for a while, real estate professionals were deemed unessential or non-essential for a while until the state board of realtors sued the state and they got deemed essential service. And in Denver, there was a pretty big lockdown on realtors not being able to do anything, showings or anything for a while too. So there's a few places like that, but overall, I'm anticipating we're going to close the month out kind of feeling like February, which isn't great for April, but it's not zero either. So, you know, I think we're doing okay.
So, some interesting things. I mean, I actually was talking to Randy and Shelby in my office the other day that we partner up on a lot of deals. And I was like, you know, I feel like May is going to be time to kind of load up on some houses because I feel like it's, you know, you're almost winding this rubber band really, really tight right now. And when this all lifts in the next 30 days, I feel like everyone's just going to kind of hit the door running, you know, Katie bar the door.
Yeah,
I'm a lot like you said. I mean, Lord, I've been doing so many yard projects in the afternoon just to not be on another Zoom call or look at my computer. But so, Kevin, what are you telling your landlords, your property owners? Has anything changed? I mean, are you asking people to sanitize houses in between turns? What, you know, I was talking with someone the other day. They feel like we may approach a new normal with this, the amount of fear and caution in the market.
Yeah.
Is there anything you're telling property owners they should do in order to avoid liability or to make their properties kind of more attractive or safer?
You know, on the liability piece, you know, on turns, obviously we're always cleaning houses on turns, but I think we're putting a little more emphasis on that. And, you know, just doing a deeper clean, trying to sanitize and disinfect things as you can. We're not in there though, you know, spraying everything down or anything like that. But, you know, we're definitely paying more attention to that, making sure we clean. But I also think it kind of goes back to one of your opening comments that in general, people are pretty good and responsible. And, you know, I think as people are moving into new homes right now, they're doing a pretty darn good job taking their Clorox disinfectant wipes, which I still have some of these, because these are old and I've been able to ration them. So I have a few, you know, and wipe things down when they're moving in, things like that. But we're trying to look at that cleanliness a little bit. But I think the biggest changes that we're doing as a business, but I'm also just advising other real estate investors who might, you know, manage their properties themselves on, is just to be proactive about this and start thinking outside the box. So whether it's, you know, virtual showings, which really weren't a big thing, people weren't into renting a house sight unseen, so to speak, right? But even if you don't have virtual showing software, you don't have to get high tech. Just take your phone and do a nice walk through the home so people can see what's going on and kind of an over the shoulder look. We've been getting a lot of traction with those and seeing things, but I also think people will still want to see the house, right? But what we're seeing is, like I talked about, our application data, or the number of applications every day is continuing to climb. We're renting houses, but our inquiries on homes and our actual showings on properties are still way down. So what we're doing is we're converting a higher amount of the showings into applications. And so what that's leading me to believe, and kind of what I'm hearing, is people are out looking at fewer houses. So they are watching the video tours, the virtual tours, the photos, calling the agent, asking them questions, really diving in about it. And then when they're, you know, 90% sure that, hey, I think this is a house for us, like, let's go check it out, right? They want to look at one or two and not three or five. And so, you know, but be proactive with that virtual stuff. do some deep cleaning between tenants. I think that's going to be important. And, I think this is going to change us for a while, how people interact with these kind of things. And they're going to be more willing to be acceptance of video tours and virtual tours and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, people have to have a place to live. So we just have to find ways to accommodate them and to make it easy for them to be checking it out. I can't hear you, Tim. Are you on mute?
I like this because I feel like I'm having an optimistic conversation with someone, which are a little hard to come by these days.
Yeah.
I was reading this morning that year over year asking prices in the DFW area are down like 5% on the retail market. Obviously, there was a lot of realtors like my wife that told their customers, hey, let's just pull your house off the market. Let the days on the market reset, wait for this to kind of all blow by, then we'll start over. But what are you seeing? You were talking about your application levels, and what are you seeing with regards to the properties that are moving? Are they reduced rents? Are they the same rent? Are they more rent? What are you kind of seeing on that on the leading edge?
We're seeing properties rent for about what we think they would rent for. So we haven't seen a big effect on rents yet. And I think our days on market, we haven't really seen this stat play out yet, right? Because we haven't really had it long enough where you're really, March was a fantastic month for us. It started out fine, it ended fine. And so we didn't have an effect on how long properties sit in the market. So those that listed in March that are just coming off, we're going to start to see a reflection in days on market. So I think things are going to sit a little longer. But again, it was about 2 weeks of slow activity. Otherwise, it started picking back up. And I'll disclaim it. We're not at April and May levels yet, but it's not a standstill by any means. And we haven't done a huge rent discounts anywhere either. So I've seen some studies and some research papers and some people saying, rent prices are going to hold steady for a couple of years. It's going to be hard to increase rents over the next 12 to 18 to 24 months. I could see an argument for that, but I also think we're in a very unknown, this has never happened before in our country, right? Where we've actually purposely shut our economy down. And it's bizarre. And so depending on how quick we really come back is going to play that out. But current state today, it's not a bunch of discounting going on out there. It's, quality properties are still renting in a reasonable amount of time. People have, at least right now, because again, people might've given notice a couple months ago or decided they're going to move a couple months ago. And so just because we're in coronavirus doesn't mean they can't. And so they have to go out and rent. And so the people who need to move are moving. And I think it just all depends on how long this lasts. If we can actually start doing things in May, that's going to be good. If this thing drags on till June or July, in a meaningful way, I think that's going to be a very different story.
So I know you've got a lot of privacy, customer security issues, but you guys manage 50, 60,000 assets. What is it?
Man, I wish we managed 50,000 assets. We manage about 22,000.
All right. So I was way wrong. Maybe I was doubling it for you.
Thank you.
22,000 assets in a lot of states. Have you been notified of any infections in any dwellings that you manage?
We haven't. We have not, that I know of, although they may not have all reached their way to me. But we did ask that as this was getting going, we set up a lot of safety protocols, and we have a task force that's dealing with this stuff across all of our homes. And so we have a safety email address that we send out to all of our residents and homeowners and ask residents, hey, if you've been affected by this from a rent perspective, let us know. But if you've been, if you have the virus or someone in your family does, please let us know. We just want to be able to understand that. And so obviously we can't require people to do so. So whether or not people actually did or not, but point is we have not heard of any big issues around people actually having it. So,
yeah, I mean, obviously none of mine have, or you would know. I'm likely to be the poster child, knowing me. All right, so I was talking with Rick Sharga last week or the week before, and he said that real estate has brought the U.S. out of every recession there's been, except for the Great Recession, because real estate actually caused that.
Right.
How crystal ball looking into the summer? And he was also talking about how all of this May, April, March demand that was suppressed will probably still bubble up, and maybe we'll have like an inverse cycle this year. You see any of that? You thinking about that? You planning for that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's tough because we don't have a crystal ball, right? But the way we're operating our business and what we're talking to people about is we really truly believe that there's going to be a ton of pent up demand coming through into the middle of summer again, whenever things kind of start to open up. And we're going to make up for a lot of the losses, so to speak, in April and May or March, if it affected you in March, I think, right? But I do think, again, the longer it goes on, the farther it pushes that out as far as kind of how quickly that rebounds. We may be dealing with this it may be a 2020 thing instead of a Q2 2020 thing, but I do think things are going to start picking up. The investors we work with, whether they're larger institutional funds or, smaller mom and pop investors that were active a month ago, they're not out of the game. They're just kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what's going to happen. And some are getting back in saying, hey, I can find some discounts from some people, right? Some builders that need to move some product right now are starting to offer some incentives to buy. So we have people looking at some new build product. But ultimately, we're getting calls every day kind of like, hey, when do you think we should be diving back in, right? And we can't, I couldn't tell you when to dive. I mean, you could buy a house right now and it's probably going to be fine. If it's a long-term, here's the deal. If you're a true investor the way I invest, which is a long-term perspective, I'm not a flipper. I don't rehab homes. I'm not good at it. I've tried. But if you invest over the long term, like, sure, buy a house right now, because in 5 years, it's going to be worth more than it is today. And your rents are going to go up. And in 20 years, I promise you, it's going to be worth more than it is today. So this doesn't matter a ton. People are a little skittish. Capital slowed down a little bit, right? It might be a little harder to get some of the loans and things like that. But so my point with all that is people are anxious. And so I think from a home sales perspective, things are going to pick up. From a leasing perspective, those who could sit still for a few months, are going to want to move in the summer or fall. So we might have that kind of inverse cycle. My only concern with the V-shaped recovery that we're all talking about, because I'm a believer in that, but my only concern with it kind of relates back to something you said earlier too, which is even if we came out today and said, all right, everybody, we decided we're good to go, like everything's open back up. Like that's not going to happen. But even if we did, there's a lot of people out there who aren't going to go to a bar today or even a restaurant today or a sporting event or a concert or whatever. So there's going to be lagging unemployment on this deal for a while. Originally when it started happening in March, I said, hey, you know what? These people are going to get laid off. It's going to be a slow month. These businesses are going to open back up, hire everyone back, and we're going to be good to go, right? But the longer this goes on, the more kind of psychological impact it has on people. People are afraid. And even when the government says it's safe, I don't know many people are going to go jam packed into a club, a bar, a restaurant, a sporting event, a stadium, concert, whatever it might be. And that's going to have an effect. But I think that's going to be small. And so we're going to see a nice recovery come through. But that's, again, just my thoughts today.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're listening live on the Zoom webinar for the REI Masterminds members or those on Facebook, if you just type some questions, we're going to get to questions in just a minute. You can go ahead and start them now. And I got a two-part little thing. So first, you were talking about how things may not ever go back to normal. I'm down there working in the barn the other day, and my hands were dirty. And, I've worked outside my entire life, so I spit on my hands, right? And I just felt like the world's nastiest human being. I was like, oh, my God, I'm going to kill everybody with – but, but it was funny. You were talking about psychological changes, right? Because I've spit on my hands a million times when I'm working and dirty and, really – so the next time you see a baseball game and some guy, starts spitting on his hands, it's like, are they going to arrest him? So it was just a funny little comment. Right. So while we're taking some questions, getting them queued up, Renters Warehouse manages over 20,000 assets in how many states?
We're in 25 states, 40 markets.
25 states, 40 markets. Recently, in January, Renters Warehouse took over my personal portfolio of rental properties, not my owner finance notes, because you don't do that yet. We'll work on you. 3 months into it, I've been very happy with the communication, the professionalism. It's just so nice to get an email from your property manager saying, hey, your lease is up. The tenant would like an extension. The current rent is this. They're willing to do it. We feel like you're actually above market, so you shouldn't try to rate. Like there was a lot of recommendation and action and intelligence enough to where we could write back, oh, okay, yeah, do it, right? Instead of having to ask questions. So I've been happy. I think my members would be happy. Why don't you just take a minute, tell us a little bit about Renters Warehouse, what y'all do, and the best way an investor could get a quote or begin a conversation about maybe moving their portfolio.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the kind words, and I'm glad you've had such a great experience. A kind of a funny story on that note. I remember at the beginning of the coronavirus, in the beginning of March or so, you called me out of the blue. We had just taken over your portfolio a couple months before. I was like, oh man, what's Tim want? And you called and said, hey, first off, let's get the pleasantries out of the way. I just want to say, things have been really great at Renters Warehouse. We've really enjoyed it, and so thank you, kind of thing. And I said, okay. And I was waiting for something else. And you said, oh, that's it, man. It's just been really great. I'm like, okay, that's the way it's supposed to go. And you just see, something happened with Tim as we're on board them or something like that. So we appreciate that feedback, and I'm glad you've had a good experience. That's the way it's supposed to work. Renters Warehouse, as you've said a couple times, we're the largest real estate investment services company in the country. So we obviously do property management. We manage about 22,000 homes across 40 markets at full service. And so whether it's rent collection, maintenance coordination, leasing of the properties, inspections, legal paperwork, accounting, all that stuff done for a flat rate. We're not percentage based, and everything you need from that angle. We also help people buy and sell investment property through our online marketplace and investment portal. And so we kind of do the full spectrum now, from researching assets to providing data and analytics on new markets, actually acquiring the property, leasing it, managing it, and ultimately at the end of the life cycle, disposing of it, and hopefully selling it to an investor with tenants in place. So full service cycle. Check us out at renterswarehouse.com, select your market. That's the easiest way to get in touch with someone on my team and go through and get a quote or just discuss your portfolio.
Well, excellent. Either no one has questions or they can't find the Q&A panel, but
Tim, you're supposed to come with pretend questions to these things with people asking you questions on your portal.
Hey, you know what? It's Friday. It is now officially beer 30. So if no one has questions, I just get off the phone and I go on about my reduced responsibility life.
Doing more work down at the barn.
Yeah, well, yeah. Kevin, can you let us know about maintenance costs? That's questions from Jim. Jim, could you clarify a little bit? I mean, maintenance costs as in what you're talking about when he manages your company, your properties? Oh, on your rentals. Okay, yeah, for sure. That's what he's asking.
Okay.
Well, let me tell you I'll tell you my personal experience, and then Kevin can add to it. So
right. When
they took over my portfolio, there were a lot of the properties we hadn't been inside in 4 to 6 years. So their help center will email us or call us when there's a maintenance request. And so the first 5 or 6, and they say, okay, well, this is what's reported. Please approve us sending a technician with a not to exceed budget. And most of the time it's been like $300 to $500. The first 5 or 6 of them, after we transitioned our portfolio, we actually sent our own guy just so we could kind of get our eyes on it and see what was going on, mainly also just to kind of see our portfolio again. But since then, I've been just almost agreeing to every not to exceed recommendation. Every one of them has been below the not to exceed on the final bill. And there's been several where the technician and the property management rep decided it should be back billed to the tenant because it was of their own doing. So that's the way it's worked for me. Kevin, maybe that's not the way it's supposed to work, but there.
Well, again, happy to hear it's working that way. That's the way it's designed. So real quick on the process, you talked about that. I think one of the unique things we do at Renters Warehouse is we're pretty flexible with how owners of the assets want to be involved in the process. There's some who really want to know everything that's going on. They want to approve invoices, see invoices, get bids, estimates, approve tenants, all that kind of stuff. And we're set up to handle that. We're also set up to handle somebody who wants to be a little more passive and say, hey, just take care of it, right? And generally, when we start a new relationship, it's a little bit more hands-on with the investors. They want to see that they can trust the process and trust the pricing. And over time, it's like, okay, great, I don't need to be involved in this kind of thing. So the full spectrum of how involved you want to be. We can let you know when the maintenance requests come out. To your point, you can approve to send them out with a do not exceed, not to exceed limit, all that kind of stuff. And we try and do a great job on call avoidance, meaning a resident calls in, says, my garbage disposal is not working. Our staff talks them through, all right, Is it making any noise? Is it humming and not cutting? Or what is it? Is it jammed? Here's how you check that out. Put the Allen wrench in the bottom of the deal. If it's not turned on at all, oftentimes there's the reset button on the bottom, right? Just try and talk them through stuff so we don't have to send a $100 tech out to do that. And ultimately, when they go out, what we do is we don't have our maintenance isn't done in-house. We use third-party vendors across the country. So we've got about 300 to 325 vendors approved on our platform, and they're all licensed, bonded, and insured. So the disclaimer is they're absolutely not the cheapest person we can find, because we're not going to Craigslist and finding the guy that says he fixes things for $10. They're licensed, bonded, people who do a great job, show up to the homes professional, all that kind of stuff. But that being said, because of the volume we have, we negotiate pretty good discounts with these guys. And so I think our pricing has proven to be pretty competitive. People are generally pretty happy with it. We don't mark up maintenance bills. So, there's not a 10% override on every work order that comes through that we're charging back to an owner. And we're just passing those discounts through to our clients. But ultimately, we want to make sure that people stick with us for a long time. And part of that is, making sure that expenses are low and the property is yielding the way it should be. So that's kind of how we handle that on the maintenance front.
One of the most important things that I've liked about Renters Warehouse is I can log on at any time into my portal and kind of look at the ledger. But the thing I like the most is typically I've been seeing that a day or two after each rent check comes in, the amount that's mine gets ACH to me, like pretty quick. I've had some other managers that it was twice a month or the end of the month, because we pay all of our mortgages on automatic payment first day of the month. So it's just nice that as the money comes into you guys, you disperse it out to us versus, playing the overnight swaps with our money for a month or two.
It's funny you bring that. It's funny you bring that up, because I think internally at Renters Warehouse, part of our cause, we forget about that as being kind of a value prop until I start talking to customers who are coming over from other managers, and they're surprised because they're kind of like, well, when do you send us rents? Well, it depends on when your tenant pays, but we process them every day. So once it clears our account, it takes a day or two to get to you with all the bank, and they're like, every day? This guy, all the managers did on the 20th or on the 15th and the 30th, and if you missed the 15th, it wasn't until the 30th, and that's crazy. So our clients have gotten so used to getting that pretty quick that we get calls on the 5th, like, hey, my tenant paid on the 2nd. I haven't seen my money yet. Like, what's going on? And it's just kind of funny how quick people kind of learn that cadence. So yeah, we process checks or electronic payments every day, every business day of the month, which is a lot of work for our team. But we've developed internal software we use to manage these properties. And so some of that's automated now. And I think that's there's no reason for us to hang on to it, right? It's got to get out to you guys so you guys can run your business.
That's right. I mean, it's been nice. So John says it's good to know things are not as bleak as the media makes it seem. Yeah, John, I agree. John asked, do you have properties where landlords are done and won't out? I have one property and I want to build a rental portfolio for retirement income. Do you have properties where landlords are done and won't out? Are you talking about
people who want to sell?
Yeah.
We do. So a couple of things. Check out our investor marketplace at renterswarehouse.com. Click you want to buy properties. You can look at tenanted assets that are there. We are having owners that are looking at selling to get out. So there's some properties there. They go pretty quick. So there's not a huge selection of the tenanted assets, but they're there. Otherwise, certainly get out and reach out to me. You can email me direct, Kevin@renterswarehouse.com as well. And I'll make sure I connect you with the right people who can kind of understand markets you're looking at, your buy box criteria. And as we see opportunities come up, we're happy to try and connect.
Had to hit mute again. Okay, what's happening in the rental market in Chicago, in college towns? Are the parents still paying? Ooh, that's a good question.
We don't do a ton of college rental, like specific college rentals, but we are in a lot of college rental areas, and people are still paying. And that's what I've been hearing from other people in the industry I've talked to that are in like the college rental game. Again, I think it goes back to what you said opening up the show, the podcast, right? That people are good generally, and they're trying to hold to their obligations. Nobody wants to deliberately screw anyone over, I don't think. And so people who have the means and whose kids are in college, it seems like they're continuing to pay. So things have been going okay. I think the fall is going to be a different story because we're starting to hear colleges talking about already doing online learning in the fall semester, in certain states and in certain areas. And I can't imagine there's going to be a lot of parents out there who want to be rented a house to have their kids go sit in a rental house near the college to do classes online. So that may have an effect as we get to the fall for that college, student housing kind of thing, but we'll have to see how that plays out.
Kevin, if they do online learning for my son in the fall, I'm moving in with you. Not going to be allowed. Hey, Nathan, you ought to reach out to Craig Foster. He's a member of the group. Craig is evaluating a 30-unit portfolio in Lubbock, and he has some interesting insights on what has happened with the rents over the last 30, 60 days since kids were sent home about 2 months ago now. So you ought to reach out to Craig. I'd steer clear of college towns right now. I mean, I've got enough of a problem with my college student trying to negotiate getting some of the housing money back, right? Because they sent them home, they wouldn't let them eat anymore, and they still process our automatic payments. So
of course
there's well, right. I mean, so it's that higher education. I won't get on that soapbox. I spent way too long on it with Rick Sharga the other week. All right, so no more questions. Anybody last chance while Kevin is kicking back? Well, buddy, I appreciate your time. I'm glad to hear you guys are staying safe and you're optimistic and you're kind of getting ready to ramp up and hit those numbers to make your annual goals.
Yeah, look, I think cautious optimism. We're not trying to be foolish and not recognize that this could cause, some serious things. But if we just have really nice access to data at a big level across the country, many markets, we're looking at one of the greatest things that's come out of this, if we want to talk silver linings of COVID-19, which there's not many, is we spent a week and a half after this thing started coming through just saying we need access to much more detailed daily information on what's happening in the business. We were always looking at it weekly, different numbers, of course, running the business, but we didn't know what the heck was going to happen. So day by day, all these different stats and we're going to be running the business by those forever. But being able to see that information, I wake up in the morning, I pull up my dashboard and understand what happened the previous day. Data doesn't lie usually, and the data is showing a hopeful trend. And so I think we're optimistic from that perspective that as far as our industry, at least, is going to be coming out of this thing pretty solid.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best parting point of this conversation is I made a really negative post in one of the Facebook groups about 3 or 4 weeks ago, just warning people about where they're getting their information. And if they're in this business thinking that the business will not be affected, that this will just blow over and back to business as usual, you've got to get your data from reliable sources, and you need to get your information from someone that either A, has really good data, or B, has a lot of experience with this type of shallow recessionary trends, and which nobody has experience in this. So
right.
These people that are, wholesaling is dead and da-da-da-da-da, it's like, slow down and make sure that you're getting your news from someone and your data from someone that is, I won't say reputable, but, doesn't have an agenda as much,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of people trying to scare people into buying courses, scare people into selling assets, scare people into taking a $100,000 loan from their 401k and investing in this or that.
Right.
And
right.
I think that's just my last point on this call is I appreciate you sharing your insights and your data and the intelligent opinions you formed based off of data versus fear or public perception. So as always, thank you for your time and thank you for your input. We all appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Tim.
Bud. Well, that's Kevin Ortner, Renters Warehouse, renterswarehouse.com. Check him out. They manage my properties, and you should let them manage yours too. Kevin, have a great day.